We'll start with the report that we got from Adam Schefter earlier this morning. He tweeted this at 4 a.m. Eastern time. Might have been a scheduled tweet. We'll see. Yeah, yes. Very strategic. But it said sources, the Bears already have been approached by multiple teams about trading the draft's number 1 overall pick, and Chicago is said to be, quote, leaning toward moving the pick. So the number 1 pick now looks like it's for sale. Your initial reaction?
Well, I mean, if you would have ever get to The Sopranos and you would watch season 2, at the end of season 2, when Tony finally confirms that Puss is a mole, that Puss has gone, to the other side, Puss tries to defend him. Well, I mean, if you're not going to keep up, I'm going to spoil it for you. That's the problem because it's relevant, right?
Night,
Good. So Puss is on the boat. And Puss tries to tell him that he's been using this effective technique of misinformation, giving the feds, feeding them bits and pieces, but really more misinformation, which obviously doesn't go over well. But to me, that's what the Combine's all about. A lot of it is about misinformation. So if you're in the league and you wake up to the Adam Schefter tweet, you say to yourself, well, this is obviously a plant job. I mean, it's scripted for 4:00, right? I'm sure Adam's up working out at 4, but he just didn't get that news at 4:00. He had that news. He held it, and it's almost like they took a billboard out. When you land in Indianapolis and you drive over to the hotels, they should have just taken a billboard out. We're getting calls from teams for draft picks, like why not take the billboard out? It's, that's what they did. And so this misinformation, you got to kind of look past it and see. If there was so much activity for the first pick overall in the draft, would you need to take an advertisement out?
No, you would not.
No, of course you wouldn't. Of course you wouldn't. The only reason you're taking the ad out via Adam is because you're trying to drum up business. You're the Maytag repairman. You're busy, but you're lonely. You got nobody's really calling. And until Bryce Young gets measured, until they throw, until everybody has all the data, nobody's going to sit there and say, wow, I got to trade up to get that guy. I think on the other side, I think the Bears are sitting there saying, which way do we go? Do we continue down this Fields road? I wrote about this extensively today and I tried to use some logic to it to why it may not work and why you may have to make the change, and the sooner the better. I think the one thing in team building that really comes out, most bad decisions in life, whether it was, it usually comes down to too late to recognize the problem, too late to react. And if that's what the Bears are going to do, they're going to be too late in this thing if they don't. Now, in fairness to the Bears, you could make the argument that maybe there isn't anybody in this draft that's better than what we have with Fields or significantly better. You could maybe make that argument. I think if Caleb Williams was coming out, that would not be the case. I think he would be the first pick, and they would pick him.
So I think most people, when they see this report, they think that, okay, we're clearly hearing two sides, because last week we saw the side of, hey, the Bears could be open to trading Justin Fields. That seemed to be the kind of dominant conversation. And now we're seeing the Bears are looking to shop this pick. And clearly this was put out there by Ryan Poles. It doesn't take any sort of private investigator to figure that one out. You just read the article there and you can see that, okay, the Bears want this information to be out there so they can drum up the interest like you talked about here. So is this just Poles just kind of evaluating everything that's out there? Or do you think that they're actually leaning towards Fields and would trade that number 1 overall pick for one of these quarterbacks once we get through this scouting combine over the next 10 days?
I think that what I've been told by people in the league reliably, that for them to get away from Fields, they don't want to look bad. Like they don't want to sell Fields off for a 4, right? He's got 2 more years of a really cheap contract, and then he goes. And he's got skill. There's teams that could want him. There's no doubt. Can he throw the football? Read the article. He doesn't. Here's the most amazing thing about when you research Fields. And I know you're going to defend him, so put your barrister cap on here. We should almost give you, in England where they give you those white robes, that white hat, the funny hairdo. We should give you that to put that on you when you defend Fields. You come in with that, and you got the whole jacket. So the Bears are tied with the Indianapolis Colts for the largest point differential in the league, minus 8.1. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, the Indianapolis Colts average 35.5 passes per game. Common for a team that's behind all the time. Common for a team that doesn't win games. Common for a team that's losing. You have to throw the ball to try to get back into the game, right? So that makes sense. The Bears, on the other hand, average 22 passes per game. Why? Because they really, even when they're behind, they don't want to throw it. Even when they're behind, they don't want to keep throwing it. Like, they know the more they throw it. Now, granted, they got sacked 55 times. I understand that. But the more they get behind, they still don't want to throw it. So that tells you a really clear story. They led the league in the least amount of incomplete passes this year, 9 per game. Sounds like a great stat, right? Yeah, but when you peel back the layers, they're not throwing it a lot. And a lot of the throws are easier throws. They can't throw it. They can't make the throws. So even when they're behind, they don't even try to throw it. So to me, that's where they have to make the decision. And again, I'll say this. I haven't studied these guys. I will. But I don't know if there's a significant – if Caleb Williams was out in this draft, I would say to you there's probably a good chance the Bears would trade Fields to do it. I don't know if they feel that way about Bryce Young. Somebody said today he's going to be 198 pounds. I mean, that's a hell of a weight program. He's gained weight. Going to be under 6 feet. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bryce Young and his weight program a little bit later on in the podcast. But obviously, yeah, we've had the Fields discussion before. We talked about it last podcast. You mentioned the numbers in the passing game.
Get your robes.
You can't lie. You can't lie about it. But I have my thoughts. You have your thoughts on it. I don't need to put the robe on today. I'll save it for another day. I'll put the robe on for another day. But I do want to ask you this, because we have seen the number 1 pick traded in NFL history dating back to the merger in 1967 12 times. The last time it happened was 2016 when the Rams moved up from number 15 to number 1 to then select Jared Goff, and they gave up a pretty good haul. I believe they traded number 15, 2 second-round picks, and a third-round pick that year, then also a first-rounder and a third-rounder the next year. What do you think the Bears could get if they were to move that pick?
I think that I think, to me, that can't get determined yet, because I don't think they know what's truly out there. I think teams don't really know what's out there. I don't think they really have a true value of where they are. I don't think it's a slam dunk. Is Stroud better than Young? Is Anthony Richardson have more potential? I think there's a lot of chatter. I don't think there's a concrete answer yet. And I think that's the hard thing to do. It's not just going to be, well, the chart says you have to give me this. The chart's reflective of the player, right? So what is the player saying they're going to get? I think that's the key. That's kind of where it all comes down to. So my sense of that is it's to be determined. And if they're trying to drum up business, they're not getting a lot of offers here.
Yeah, which would make sense since we haven't seen much of the scouting process unfold here leading up to the draft. Do you think that the teams, because we've heard about the teams that are interested in the veteran quarterbacks like Rodgers, like Carr, Garoppolo, do you think that those teams that are interested in the veterans might also be interested in the rookie guys that are going to come out of this class? Do you think that those are two separate teams, or is there a little bit of crossover as well?
I think the veteran guys are more stopgap guys, right? Is there? I mean, if you sign Garoppolo, right? And my understanding is Garoppolo has a few meetings. I don't know if he's got a lot of meetings at the combine where he's got 20 teams after him, but he'll get. I think Garoppolo's market won't be in the 30s, and I don't think it'll be below 20, but I think it's going to be somewhere in there. Maybe it goes 18, 19, I don't know. But I think, to me, everything's going to look at as if we sign Garoppolo, then we still need to see if we can find one. The problem is, who are we finding? Who's out there that we feel like we can get? I think that remains to be seen. It's got to be strategically aligned. I think that's the hard part.
So it's almost like with some of these veteran guys like a Garoppolo and maybe even a Carr or Rodgers, with his unpredictability on how long he might play beyond this year, if he plays this year at all, this could almost be like where teams would not be afraid to double up, to sign a guy and also draft one of these young guys.
I don't think you could be afraid to double up. I really don't.
Okay.
I don't think you can. I think you have to take to me, I think the best strategy here is take the Andy Reid approach, right? I trade for Alex Smith. I got him. And then when the right moment comes along to get the next guy that I know I have to get, go get him. But there's no sense in wasting. See, what you don't want to do is duplicate, right? You don't want to do something and then have to do something immediately. Like you don't want to sign Andy Dalton and then draft a guy and realize the guy you drafted is better than Andy Dalton. You want to sign somebody that you feel like we could win. Like you could, whatever you think of Garoppolo, there's a lot of good tape on Garoppolo. You can win with Garoppolo, right? So if you sign Garoppolo, there's no rookie going to beat out Garoppolo, right? So you feel like, okay, I got him for 2 years, 3 years. That gives me time to find my guy. If you sign Jacoby Brissett, you're probably saying, okay, I got to have to find a guy sooner rather than later. Although Jacoby Brissett played much better. I thought he played much better last year than he ever did in his career. So I think a lot of it is who you sign and how you sign him. If you sign Cooper Rush, and you're probably saying, okay, I got a year to get it. But Cooper Rush will come in and effectively run the offense I want to run.
It's almost like back in 2012 when the Seahawks, they signed Matt Flynn in free agency to be their starter. They draft Russell Wilson as well. And then they have the open competition in camp and Russell Wilson beat out Matt Flynn there. But that was kind of a spot where they doubled up. And I know people in Seattle being in that area around that time, everyone was saying, oh, look, we need to play Matt Flynn. That's the guy who we signed as a free agent. But Pete Carroll, John Schneider, they clearly saw something else and they decided to go with Russell Wilson. And obviously we know the rest is history there.
I think that's a great point to bring up. Because I can remember being in Radio City at the draft and Jason LaCafour and I were down at the children's table while all the other people were up on the main table. And when they made the selection of Russell Wilson, I said on air, I don't know how this is going to work, right? You only have so many reps to give a player. So you sign Flynn, you trade it for Whitehurst, and now you draft Russell Wilson. Okay? And what I learned from that was that the more you keep throwing things up against the wall, something's going to stick. And so I give them credit for that. Like, I learned something there. Like, for me, I probably would have said, here's where I'm going. I gave Flynn this money. Let's see what he can do. But I think they did a great job of keeping that going, and I think that's kind of the mentality. Now, they liked Wilson. They didn't. I mean, if they would have thought Wilson was going to be as good as he ended up being, I don't know if they would have waited till the third round to get him, but that's beside the point. They got him.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.